The house had always been a source of fascination and fear for me. It was a sprawling, ancient mansion that loomed over the small town like a malevolent specter. Its dark, ivy-covered walls seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, and its windows, many of them boarded up, gave it a sinister, abandoned look. Rumors had always swirled around the place, stories of hauntings, disappearances, and strange occurrences. But I was drawn to it, as if some unseen force compelled me to explore its mysteries. One cool, moonless night, I decided to satisfy my curiosity once and for all. I parked my car a safe distance away from the mansion, hidden by the overgrown trees that surrounded it. Armed with nothing more than a flashlight and a sense of trepidation, I made my way to the front door. The wood creaked ominously beneath my feet as I entered the mansion. The air inside was thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. Cobwebs hung in the corners like ghostly curtains, and the walls seemed to close in on me with every step. I had no plan, no purpose for being there other than a morbid fascination. The mansion's history was shrouded in darkness, and I wanted to uncover its secrets, to see if the stories were true. As I moved deeper into the mansion, I heard faint, eerie sounds, whispers that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. I brushed them off as my own imagination playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The mansion was a labyrinth of long, narrow hallways and countless rooms. Each one held its own sense of foreboding, as if they were all chapters in a twisted tale of horror. I couldn't resist the urge to explore them all. Hours passed as I wandered deeper into the mansion's depths, my flashlight cutting through the darkness like a fragile lifeline. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and it felt as though unseen eyes were following my every move. Finally, I entered a room unlike any other I had seen. It was larger, grander, with faded wallpaper that hinted at a once opulent past. In the center of the room stood a dusty, ornate mirror, its glass dark and cloudy. I approached it cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. As I looked into the mirror, my reflection began to warp and twist, and for a horrifying moment I saw the face of a man with cold, dead eyes and a twisted grin. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. But when I looked again, my reflection was normal. I was about to flee the room when I heard it, a faint scratching sound coming from above, from the ceiling. I aimed my flashlight upward and saw a small, hidden door in the ceiling, leading to the attic. My heart raced as I pulled down the attic stairs and climbed up into the darkness above. The attic was even more decrepit than the rest of the mansion, with rotting wooden beams and piles of forgotten belongings. The air was thick with a pungent, foul odor that made my stomach churn. And then, I heard it again. The scratching, the shuffling, coming from the far corner of the attic. I cautiously made my way toward the source of the noise, my flashlight trembling in my hand. What I saw in that dim light will haunt me forever. Huddled in the corner was a man, or at least something that resembled a man. His clothes were tattered and filthy, his hair long and matted, his skin pale and sickly. But it was his eyes that froze my blood. They were empty, devoid of any humanity, and they stared at me with a feral intensity. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't respond, only continued to stare at me with those soulless eyes. Are you living here?" I asked, my voice trembling. Still, he said nothing, but a cruel smile crept across his lips, revealing yellowed, broken teeth. Fear surged through me and I turned to flee, but before I could make my escape, he lunged at me with surprising speed, his fingers like claws. I screamed and fought back, the flashlight falling from my hand, casting the attic into darkness. In the struggle, I felt his icy fingers close around my throat, squeezing the life out of me. Desperation fueled my strength, and I managed to break free, scrambling toward the attic stairs. I could hear his ragged breathing and the scrape of his nails on the attic floor behind me. I stumbled down the stairs, my heart pounding, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I burst out of the mansion, not daring to look back, and ran as fast as my trembling legs could carry me. I never returned to that accursed mansion, and I never spoke of what I had seen. But in the darkest corners of my nightmares, I still hear the whispers, and I still see those empty, soulless eyes. And I can't help but wonder what other horrors lurk in the shadows of that malevolent mansion. I've always been a night owl. There's something about the stillness of the world after the sun sets that draws me in, like a moth to a flame. But one particular night, my love for the darkness turned into a chilling nightmare that I'll never forget. It was a cold autumn evening, and the moon hung in the sky like a pale, silent sentinel. I had just finished a late shift at work and was walking home, my footsteps echoing through the empty streets. The city, usually bustling with life, felt eerily quiet. As I walked along the dimly lit sidewalk, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. At first, I dismissed it as my imagination playing tricks on me. After all, I was tired, and the mind can conjure up all sorts of illusions in the dead of night. But the feeling persisted, like a shadow lurking just beyond the reach of my vision. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest, and tried to rationalize the unease creeping over me. Maybe it was just the wind rustling through the trees, or the distant echo of a car engine. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself, I couldn't escape the undeniable sensation that someone was following me. I turned a corner, hoping to lose whatever imaginary pursuer I had conjured up in my mind. But the unease only grew stronger. The streets were devoid of life, and the silence was oppressive. It was as if the entire world had fallen asleep, leaving me alone in the darkness with my paranoia. I stole a glance over my shoulder, my breath catching in my throat. There, in the distance, I saw a figure. It was too far away to make out any details, just a silhouette lurking in the shadows. My heart raced and I picked up my pace, determined to put as much distance as possible between myself and whatever, or whoever, was following me. As I walked, I became acutely aware of every sound around me. The rustling of leaves, the creaking of branches, the distant hum of a streetlight. Each noise sent shivers down my spine, and I couldn't help but imagine sinister intentions behind them. I knew I had to do something, to confirm whether my fears were justified or if I was simply succumbing to paranoia. I decided to take a detour through a park, a shortcut that would either reveal my pursuer or prove that I was simply losing my mind. The park was a dark, foreboding place at night. The trees loomed overhead like ancient sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out as if to snatch anyone foolish enough to venture into their domain. The path was narrow, and the only light came from the feeble glow of the occasional lamppost. I pressed on, my heart pounding louder in my ears with each step. And then I heard it, a faint rhythmic sound like footsteps on gravel. I stopped dead in my tracks, my breath catching in my throat. It was the unmistakable sound of someone, or something, approaching from behind. I turned around slowly, my eyes scanning the darkness. There, just beyond the reach of the dim lamppost, I saw a figure shrouded in darkness. It was a person, their features hidden in the shadows, but I could feel their eyes on me, boring into my soul. A chill ran down my spine and I took a step back, my mind racing. I had to get out of there, had to escape this nightmare. I turned and sprinted down the path, my footsteps echoing through the park. The figure behind me gave chase, their footsteps growing louder and faster with each passing moment. As I ran, panic set in, and I fumbled for my phone to dial 911, but my hands were shaking so violently that I could hardly hold on to it. I cursed under my breath and kept running, hoping to reach a more well-lit area where I could call for help. I burst out of the park and onto a busy street, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The figure pursuing me stopped at the edge of the park, their form still hidden in the shadows. I could feel their gaze burning into my back, even from a distance. With trembling fingers, I finally managed to dial 911 and gasped out my location to the operator. They assured me that help was on the way, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. I glanced back at the park, but the figure was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for the police to arrive. The feeling of being followed had left me shaken to my core, and I couldn't escape the sensation that the darkness still held secrets I couldn't comprehend. When the police finally arrived, they searched the area thoroughly but found no trace of the person who had been following me. They took my statement, and I described the figure as best I could, though the details were vague at best. As I walked home that night, escorted by a police officer, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something sinister. The fear of being followed had left an indelible mark on me, a darkness that clung to my every step. To this day, I still don't know who or what was following me that night.